Yes, I'm a Christian. Yes, I'm trans. Yes, I'm talking about it today. Do you ever consider detransitioning so you can be as God intended you to be? So that's an excellent question. I reached out to God. In almost no time, I had what I can only describe as a supernatural experience. If you can be a politician autographing bombs that get sent off to the Middle East to kill children, if you can be a serial killer on death row and find God, if God is available to all those people, I know for a fact God is available to me. Yes, I'm a Christian. Yes, I'm trans. Yes, I'm talking about it today. Super non-controversial video today, guys. Nothing too spicy, nothing that should, cause any disagreements, of course, in the comments. I'm sure no emotions will rise up from any of this. So let's just jump right in. A lot of people have a lot of feelings, questions, opinions, statements to be made, concerns, etc. about my religion, my faith, my journey towards having faith, because a lot of you guys know that I was not always a Christian. It's been about a 1.5 to 2 year journey now at this point, and it's something that is super deeply personal and something that I have refrained myself from talking a lot about. And I wanted to talk about it today because I haven't really gone in depth about it. I've mentioned it in passing on my podcast channel, which you guys should subscribe to if you haven't. But I wanted to do a main channel, like full sit down, kind of like OG Blaire video where I'm just like talking with you guys, right? I do have a disclaimer though, a few things that I am not in this video. I am not an expert on Christianity or the Bible. I am not a biblical scholar. I am not a preacher. I am not here to convert anybody. That would have never worked with me. And so that's simply not my goal here today. I just want to talk about me, my story with it. And I have a few things I want to get across, and we'll get into that. I'm aware that there are no trans people on the internet almost at all talking about being Christian or religious at all, for that matter, on the internet. Similar to how when I started my channel, there were no trans people talking about right-wing values or being somewhere, other than the radical far left on the political spectrum. And I find that kind of sad, because the idea that Christianity is, or religion is, somehow separate from being gay or trans is something that I've definitely seen my whole life. A lot of gay and trans people feel like they are so far removed from having access to that. They feel a lot of resentment towards, religious establishment. They feel a lot of forsakenness. They feel forsaken by the church, forsaken by God, forsaken by the Bible. Today's video is sponsored by Merge Cooking, the cozy merge game where I can actually de-stress, relax, and decompress. You start small, merging ingredients and tools, and suddenly you're running this gorgeous global restaurant empire. Think Paris cafes, Tokyo sushi bars. It's a full culinary world tour. And yes, you get to style your character Lee in iconic outfits from every country. Zero cost, full fun. No ads, no in-app purchases, and no hidden fees. Merge Cooking is a relaxing and stress-relieving game. The tasks are not too simple, but they're never too hard either. By completing these light and enjoyable missions, players can unlock restaurants from different countries, from Tokyo to Paris, with over 1,000 dishes waiting to be discovered. What I love is that it's smart merging. It's not mindless tapping. It's oddly satisfying, super aesthetic, and totally free. And here's the best part. Truly offline freedom. You can play anywhere, anytime, even without Wi-Fi. It's perfect for travel days or coffee breaks, whatever. There's even a new equipment fusion system that lets you merge kitchen tools to unlock unique recipes. It's the perfect stress relief game to unwind after a long day. So if you want a relaxing, free game that's actually rewarding, click the link to download Merge Cooking and use the code Blaire. The download link and gift code are in the description and the pinned comment of this video. Or you can just scan the QR code somewhere on the screen. Thank you so much to Merge Cooking for sponsoring this video, and now on to the rest of the video. And I'm not here, like I said, to be a biblical scholar. For a long time, I felt like I had to be an expert or I had to have it all figured out. And then I realized, the further I learned, no one has it figured out and no one knows what they're talking about. There's apparently over 45,000, according to the World Christian Encyclopedia, 45,000 to 47,000 Christian denominations in the world. So that is a lot of different groups within that umbrella that can't seem to agree on what the Bible says or doesn't say, what the true path to God or Jesus truly is. And so, as far as I'm concerned, as long as the whole world is debating everything about it, I don't have to have it all figured out to sit here and just be honest with you guys. For me, finding Christianity, finding God has been the most transformational, profound, empowering thing that's occurred, not just in my adult life, but in my entire life. And so the idea that there are people who maybe deprive themselves of that because they're gay or because they're trans or because they're any sort of, pariah or someone who's felt forsaken or scorned by religious people, that makes me sad. So a lot of you guys may remember a few years ago, I was on the Roseanne Barr podcast and we had a really funny, but real, at least to me, moment where I was telling her, I feel like I'm being called to God, but I don't really know how to get there intellectually. I'll put the clip in. It's super funny. I want to believe in God, actually, but I don't really know how.
Look up through your eye sockets as far as you can. Look all the way up to where your head hurts or your eyes strain. Your eyes way up there. Breathe in, contain it. Up there. It's cool up there.
I don't think I'm trans anymore. And so that was silly, but it was real. I use humor, and so does she, about stuff like that. But it was not too long after that I had this awakening. And it happened slowly and over time, but also in a moment. And it's so hard to explain that. And I feel like if you've had a spiritual awakening, I feel like you get that. And I'm not trying to use language that isn't, familiar to people who aren't spiritual or haven't had that moment or whatever, but you know what I mean if you know what I mean. And if you don't, maybe just stick with me and try to hear me out. And around that time period, I reached out to God and I said, please, explain to me why I'm feeling this pull. Tell me what this means. And if you felt the pull, again, you know what I'm saying. And I said, I don't know how to logically get there that you're real. I was super literal and physicalist about it. I was like, if you could just give me not a sign, I don't want something, fuzzy or something that is kind of enigmatic or not tangible. I want you to prove to me that you're not only real, but there's a point to me talking to you like this. There's a point to me feeling like I can communicate with you. And in almost no time, I had what I can only describe as a supernatural experience. And yet it was so tangible at the same time. It was so literal at the same time, yet impossible, yet totally out of the, scope of possibility, that it was exactly what I asked for and needed for. And I felt like my entire third eye opened, or my spiritual life opened at that moment. And I didn't know where that was necessarily headed. I actually, even at the time, wasn't necessarily set on that means the Christian God of the Christian Bible. But that is where I felt called after that moment, which changed my life forever. And I think I'm going to keep some of those specific details to myself because it is so deeply personal and so mind-bending, and so I'm still unpacking in a lot of ways, despite the fact that I experienced it and have worked through it. And I feel like I sort of had a moment where I really grew up intellectually as well, because I started to understand what I thought the world was when I had this awakening. I had no clue. I thought I had it all figured out, that what this world is, it's what's right in front of you, right? This microphone, this table, this hair, this light on me right now. And that I realized my mind actually can't wrap around exactly what this thing is that we're all living in, and that there are forces so much higher, and one force really sitting at the top of that. And I feel like part of that growing up was also, I realized how much I had judged God through the lens of people who had represented or, proclaimed to represent God throughout my life. I thought of the fact that, the few times I had gone to church as a kid, I had so many questions and I felt like they were not answered by the people in the church. I felt like I almost could intuit more about the Bible as a little kid reading it than the pastor or the Sunday school teacher telling me about it. They almost knew nothing about it. And so I felt like that somehow meant that God, that was a sort of indictment on God in my mind. Well, this can't be real. God can't be real because people don't represent him well. You hear of scandals in the church. You hear of scandals, horrific ones, in the Catholic Church throughout history. You see so many people using religion, all religions, to justify heinous things. You see people not living through, the biblical teachings they purport to believe in or preach to others. You see it weaponized. You see it used as a way to launch hate at people, sometimes gay and trans people as well, obviously. And so I realized that I had been judging God by people. The fact that I didn't feel necessarily welcome or at home in a church, I had this misconception that that was somehow a statement about God. And God is not people. People cannot represent God. And so that's been really foundational in my understanding of spirituality and God as well. And I'll speak to the gay and trans thing right now, because obviously that's a part of this, right? And by the way, it's only a part of this because unlike other people whose, sins or whose conditions or whose actions may be concealed by the fact that they're not wearing it, on their sleeve, I'm coming to you as a trans person on video saying that. There's a lot of people out there that are cheating on their wives, autographing bombs that get sent off to the Middle East to kill children who call themselves Christians. A lot of people who, where they may be contradicting the Bible in their personal life, they have the cover of it not showing or, coming up front. I'm coming to you with all my cards on deck, right? And I've seen so many gay and trans people hold this resentment because some of them have been abused by the church, abused by religious people in their family. A lot of them, as children and as adults are told that they cannot be gay and, have a relationship with Jesus, for which I have to really emphasize that and say, that's the thing that has really drawn me to Christianity, is that it really truly is about a personal relationship with God. And I never understood that. I saw it as this legalistic, here's all the list of rules you have to follow for God. And don't get me wrong, there are rules. However, Jesus over and over emphasized the relationship aspect between every person and God, and he never excluded anybody. In fact, there are so many wonderful passages where he makes it very clear, such as Galatians 3:28, which states that there is neither male nor female, for you all are one in Jesus Christ. Now, does that mean, we're all non-binary? Obviously not. The lens at which you look through the Bible, I know it varies. Like I said, 50,000 denominations of Christianity who can't seem to agree on small and big things. So the way I interpret that is the entire story of Jesus is about transcending flesh. That's just my own personal opinion. And again, I'm not here to prove to you God is okay with me being trans. It's not the point of this video. No one is deprived of a relationship with Jesus. If you can be a politician autographing bombs that get sent off to the Middle East to kill children, if you can be a serial killer on death row and find God, for which there are many pastors who work with people on death row and try to save their souls. If God is available to all those people, I know for a fact God is available to me. And how do I know that? Because I met God, because I had that personal, transformational experience, that supernatural experience, like I said. And it's just been so positive in my life, and I can't imagine my life, I just can't imagine it before anymore. Sometimes I almost forget, like, how did I even get through it all? So I threw it out to you guys on my Instagram to ask me any questions you wanted me to address in this video and any sort of like statements you wanted to make, whatever the case may be. Has it been difficult to find a church to be a part of / call home? I wouldn't say difficult. I would just say that I have not felt called to go to church. And a lot of people feel like being a Christian is synonymous with going to church, and that the only way to be a Christian is going to church every Sunday. And that is not biblical. The Bible and Jesus talks about how the church isn't here, right? The church is in the body of people who believe in Jesus and are aligned with Jesus. That's actually emphasized over and over and over again. And Jesus was very anti-establishment, anti-power structure when it came to the church. And so it's not about the establishment. It's not about a hierarchy of people to judge you or people you have to go through to get to God. You have a one-way connection, a one-way line to Jesus if you so seek it. I feel very comfortable saying that I'm a Christian, I'm not a churchgoer. And that's also not to say that I am against it. It's also not to say that I am not open to that. There is a church that was recommended to me recently here in Austin that I'm considering going to just to try it out. But I just want to say it's not a prerequisite to salvation or believing in God or believing in, Jesus or any of that. It's actually the opposite is said in the Bible. So how do you reconcile being trans with religion? Some people think God messed up. So that would be the whole God doesn't make mistakes. You know what I mean? You can't be born in the wrong body sort of thing that people talk about when they try to debunk this trans Christian supposed split. And for me, I never adhered to any sort of ideology that said I was born in the wrong body or God made a mistake. Even before I was a self-identified Christian and found God, I never, I never used that language. I never believed that. I never believed there was a mistake with my birth. I believed that my path was my path. And I believe that my path has been solidified throughout this entire journey until now through God, in the sense of I've had people, whether it's on tour or whether I'm meeting someone in the mall or whether I'm encountering somebody in the street who has benefited from my, my work on YouTube and my work in the public eye. I've had people break down crying and thanking me that I helped them find God even before I was a Christian. People, detransitioners, people who are trans, people who have felt helped by my, videos, people who have said, you've stopped me from, deleting myself or ending my life. And I know that, just complete self-awareness here, I would not have the platform to have reached those people if I were not trans. I'm very aware that a part of my public profile, the reason I rose to having a public image, reaching people, millions of people all over the world for a decade now, trans is an integral part of that. And so, in my opinion, and what I feel through my relationship with God, like I said, that is all part of God's plan for me. So I never thought that I'm correcting God's plan or I was, correcting a mistake that was made. These are the sorts of things that trans activists put on all trans people, just like how they put on that Christianity is somehow adverse or an enemy. I recognize how easy it is to conflate God with people and the way that they represent him, but that's not fair, in my opinion. And this is a perfect example. I've been interested in returning to religion, but feel conflicted due to anti-gay religious right. So again, this is the point that I really want to stress. You've been interested in returning to religion, so you felt that calling like I did, but what's keeping you away from that is people. Really unpack that and really ask yourself, how much does that make sense? That I've been feeling called to God and religion, but people have dissuaded me. That's how you know that those are not the same things. People can, push you and push you away from anything. But the beauty of that is it's not about them. So that's just what I had to realize and kind of mature. I'm not saying you're immature, but I had to really get there intellectually, actually it doesn't matter what a single person I've ever heard talk about Christianity or how they represented it or how they behaved with it. Not a single one of those examples matters. What matters is, does this do something for me? Am I called to this? Is God real or is he not? Do you ever consider detransitioning so you can be as God intended you to be? So that's an excellent question. And I'm glad you made it because I would have maybe forgot to talk about that. There are people, obviously, when you look at people who are ex-gay Christians, who the way that they feel compelled to go forward when they find God or meet God is they're living a lifestyle like they're not gay anymore. They used to be gay and they're not. They're refraining from being gay. I've seen a couple of detransitioners who found God and that helped them in that, and then they, detransitioned and all of that. And so all of that is valid if that's how you feel, called or what you're supposed to do, or that's your life, right? But this is mine. And I have not felt any calling or compulsion to detransition or radically change how I look or any of that, because I realized that, again, to me, the story of Jesus is that he transcended flesh. And what is all of this if not just how I've altered my flesh? It's just external, it's superficial. And if it's about being a man as God intended, y'all know I am the last person to ever deny that is the way I was born, that I am still male, that I am still, by definition, a man. I don't care. You know what I mean? I've never argued against that. You don't have to feel, just because you are someone who has transitioned, that you have truly become an opposite sex. This is a false premise made by trans activists again. So I never felt any of those kinds of ways. And if there are Christians out there who feel like me being Christian is fake or somehow, I am not truly saved by God because I'm not feeling compelled to detransition, that is absolutely your right to feel that way. Just like it's my right to feel like, if I feel ever pulled to that, because that's what God tells me to do, and I feel that in my heart and soul, I have no problem obeying. I have no problem doing that. But until I feel that, it is what it is. Scripture says it's a sin for a man to wear woman's clothing. Absolutely. So if we want to clock, all of our founding fathers who sat up in wigs and powder and high heels, who, wrote the Constitution, let me know when we do that. Or let me know if that's just aimed at someone like me. Because I'm pretty sure a few lines over, it also says no mixed fabrics, and y'all aren't adhering to that. So again, it's all about people and how they feel. And if I'm wrong or you're wrong, that's okay. And if you want to check all the women in the world right now, I'm sure thousands of which are watching this video wearing jeans, which 2 seconds ago was considered, cross-dressing, right? So I don't think God is too concerned with the fashion trends of the time. Because again, if he transcended flesh, he definitely transcended fabric. It comes down to people and how they interpret things, and that's fine. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If y'all are wrong, y'all are wrong. Does that make sense?
It does.
Women wear jeans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like 2 seconds ago, that was a whole scandal when women started wearing jeans.
Right.
And just like 2 seconds before that, if you were a man, the manliest men of status and power wore curled wigs and powder on their face and high heels. I think God is much more concerned with my heart. In fact, there is so much more scripture to back that up than looking at technicalities about current fashion trends and what current, times dictate as male or female clothing. And by the way, to make one thing abundantly clear, like, I did not want to forget this. One of the things I am not saying in this video, similar to how I'm not trying to preach, I am also not trying to say that like these modern super pro LGBT churches that have like drag queen story hour for kids or drag performers with kids, I absolutely do not support those churches and what they're doing. And again, I already stated, I feel uncomfortable with churches in general. I go straight to God. I definitely know that inappropriate performances around kids or introducing kids to sexual concepts is wrong. And I believe that before I found God. So that is not what I'm saying when I'm like trans and gay people should feel free and comfortable to explore religion. I'm saying exactly that. I think that everybody, and this is biblical, should feel comfortable and open and welcome to finding God, right? And if you don't feel open and comfortable in a church, neither do I. But maybe no one told you don't need that. And maybe some people feel like they do need that because they need it explained to them. And I did feel that way also at the beginning of my journey with Christ, because I felt like the Bible is so complicated. It's so old. There's so many different denominations saying that it says this and it says this. There's been so many translations. There's been books taken out. I'm a really big believer in, this is just my personal thing, I'm a big believer in, when I went to learn about the Bible, I pray to God for the discernment to figure it out through that and through the relationship with God. And I still don't have it figured out, but just to have the eyes to see and to read and to truly understand where the truth lies, what's been altered in the Bible, because unfortunately, you know what I mean? A lot of Christians on online lately are coming to understand things like the Schofield Bible, and there's no denying the Bible has been messed with, because of course the devil's going to mess with the Bible, but there are core tenets, there are core stories, there are plot holes that actually do neatly get filled in when you're willing to look at some of the banned books of the Bible that once were canonical and maybe are not now, right? So it's very complicated, and I get that. But the beauty of God, in my opinion, is he's like all things at once. So even though he's so complicated, he's also so simple. And when you really like go in with the intention of like, I am empowered enough to understand this on my own, I am empowered enough to go through God to figure all of this out, he really does provide that to you. And that's been my personal experience. Again, not that I'm some final boss biblical expert. I am not about to be accepting any invitations after this for debates from Christian channels who I'm sure have a million little things they want to nitpick. Just like a denomination they agree with is going to nitpick what they say. If you know, you know. If you know what I'm talking about, you get it. If you don't, that's okay. So I hope you guys understand and see that I clearly came at this being as humble as I possibly can. I'm going to be reading all the comments on this one for sure, so let me know all of you guys' thoughts. Thank you so much to Merge Cooking for sponsoring this video. Make sure you guys go download the game, check them out, link in the description or QR code somewhere on the screen. I'm not trying to sell you on Jesus, but I am trying to sell you on them. So go check them out. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel as well as my podcast channel. Follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok, all of the things, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys. God bless.